Welcome to Happily Home Cooking. I hope you brought your appetite because today I'm sharing with you a delicious recipe for a creamy steak pot pie. My husband grilled up this amazing tri-tip yesterday, and so today I made this pot pie using what we had left over. I added some mushrooms, onions, and bell peppers, some of my favorite veggies to have with steak, and combined it all together in a creamy 3-cheese sauce. I topped it off with some simple homemade biscuits, and it was so good. It was hearty, it was so flavorful, and not only did it use up our leftovers, but it was also super easy to make. I did all the prep work early on in the day and had it ready to go in the fridge. So when we were getting ready for dinner, all I had to do was throw together my biscuits and pop it in the oven. If this recipe sounds good to you, make sure you hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more of our family's favorite recipes, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how I made this delicious creamy steak pot pie. I started by prepping my veggies. I chopped up half of a large yellow onion, one large bell pepper. I used red because that's just what I had in the fridge. I bet green would be really good too though. You can really cut these into any size bites you like. If you wanted something a bit more rustic, you could leave them in larger chunks. I like to have everything chopped up pretty small so you can get a little bit of everything in each bite. I added some cremini mushrooms. I thickly sliced about a dozen of those. And then I chopped up our leftover tri-tip steak. This was about 10 ounces that we had left over, and I just chopped it up into little bite-sized strips. I love having cooked meats left over from the day before because it makes dishes like this so easy to put together. Now our secret ingredient that I added that you might not think of for a pot pie is some pepperocinis. Their flavor really complements the steak. I always have them on sandwiches when we have steak sandwiches, so I figured why not throw them in here, and they really added great dimension to our pot pie. So I sliced up 4 pepperocinis into some thin rings. Now in a large skillet over a medium heat, I added in just a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil, and I added in my onions to get going first. I like to add the onions before the other veggies just so they have a chance to develop some nice color. Once my onions were translucent and I started to see a bit of that browning, I went ahead and added in the rest of the bell peppers and mushrooms. And I just let these cook while I stirred them over that medium heat until those bell peppers and mushrooms were nice and tender. I did season them with a bit of salt and pepper here, just to help build those layers of flavors. Then once the veggies were just about tender, I added in a tablespoon of minced garlic and gave that a stir and let it continue cooking for another minute or 2 until that garlic was nice and fragrant. And now we're ready to add in the rest of our ingredients to our veggies. I added 1 can of cream of mushroom soup, a cup and a half of water, along with about a teaspoon of better than bouillon beef base. If you prefer, you could substitute beef broth for the water and bouillon. Then I just added in our chopped steak and sliced pepperocinis and gave it all a good stir together and let it heat through. Now the last thing I added was about 5 ounces of cheese. I used a couple slices of havarti, a couple slices of pepper jack, and a couple slices of good old American cheese. I gave these a quick slice just to make it easier for them to melt into our sauce. Sprinkled them all in. And gave it a stir until that cheese was nice and melted into our pot pie filling. And then last thing for your filling, just give it a taste, see if you want to season it up anymore with any additional salt or pepper. Our meat was already really well seasoned with Meat Church Dia de la Fajita seasoning. But if your meat is more lightly seasoned or you want a little more punch of flavor, you can add your own favorite seasoning blend to taste. So at this point our filling was done. I just poured it into a 2-quart casserole dish, covered it with some plastic wrap, and popped it into the fridge until I was ready to bake it later in the day. When you're ready to bake your pot pie, all you need to do is throw together your biscuits while your oven's preheating. Just combine 2 cups of all-purpose flour with 3/4 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Just grab a fork or a spoon and give those a quick mix to combine. Then cut in a 1/4 cup or 1/2 stick of cold butter. If you have a pastry cutter, of course you can use that, or if not, just grab yourself a couple butter knives and you're going to cut the butter using this scissor motion. We're trying to break this down into small pebble-sized chunks. We don't want to melt the butter. Having the little chunks of butter will give you flaky biscuits. This is the exact same biscuit recipe, by the way, that I use in my Biscuits and Gravy, and I'll post the link to that recipe down below as well. They make delicious biscuits that have a slight crust on the outside and are super fluffy on the inside. Now just combine 3/4 cup of milk with 2 teaspoons of white vinegar, and then pour that mixture into your flour mix. And I like to use a fork to stir it around until our dough starts to form. Once you have a somewhat manageable dough, you can just turn it out onto your cutting board, and we'll finish incorporating all those bits of flour simply by folding the dough over on itself. Just think of folding it in half about 6 times or so until your dough has come together. And then pat out the dough until it's about 1/2 to 3/4 inch thick. And grab your biscuit cutter or a martini shaker and go ahead and cut out your biscuits. I get a couple at a time and then take the scraps of dough, fold them over a couple times to bring it together, pat it out once again, and cut the rest. This recipe will give you 4 nice-sized biscuits, which is perfect because our creamy steak filling is also just right for serving 4 of your favorite people. Now press a small indentation using your fingers into the top of each biscuit and place them on top of your pot pie. And then we'll brush these quickly with a tablespoon of melted butter, and then our pot pie is ready to bake. I baked this at 375 degrees for about 45 minutes or so until the filling was hot and bubbly and my biscuits were cooked all the way through. After about 25 minutes or so, my biscuits were already nice and golden brown on top, so I just loosely covered the top with a piece of foil so they didn't get too dark. As you can see, once it was all done, the biscuits were beautiful and golden. They're flaky on the inside, and they're delicious atop this creamy steak filling we made. This is savory and flavorful, and there's just the right amount of sauce to soak up with that biscuit, making every bite the perfect bite. Thanks so much for watching. If this recipe has made you suddenly very hungry to try our creamy steak pot pie, please hit that like button down below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see more of our family's favorite recipe videos. Have an awesome day. Happy home cooking!